Hi, today I'm going to walk through the build for my latest LEGO model. This one is called Heavy Light. And before I dive into how it's put together, maybe just point out a few areas here that I think are interesting. So firstly, this is the first time I've used this new cockpit, this windscreen glass here in the front. And for this one, I thought it looked better with that glass canted forward. So I've built up some angles around it. So it's firstly at about 18 degrees. And then I brought the whole cockpit section down again on top of this to match up the angle of this Technic piece here. And I think it gives a pretty good look. Around the front of that cockpit screen, I had to build up something which would wrap around it and then cut forward. That's what these wedges are doing. And I wanted some color blocking that would cut around the outside of the glass with the blue. And I'll show later how I've done that, but it was a good bit of fun. It was interesting to figure out how to make that work. Down below the cockpit area, had fun putting together some greebles, and they kind of cut back. And then as we get from the front to the rear of the ship, another area I invested a lot of time in was this kind of transition to this engine-y area where it came up with this geometry with these hoses wrapped around some cylindrical elements and then twisted to give it a spiral kind of look. And then that whole section then cuts back into a kind of a cowl on the back, and then a cowl here in the front on the back of the cockpit. And getting that geometry to work was also really interesting. Took a good long time. Where it cuts from the front to the back, I've added these Technic struts. And I think it's, if I tilt it back like this, you can see, I think it's an interesting look. I really like the angles that pulls off. And then here in the back, as we transition back to these big engines, I found this interesting canopy element. It's available in a few colors. One of them is yellow. And I really like this shape, this jog once, jog twice kind of shape. And it seems sort of perfect for doing something on the outside of this angular engine, while also providing an interesting cutout area where you could put some greebly mechanical bits on the inside. And I thought that came together pretty nicely. And then finally, this area up on top ultimately transitions to something cylindrical here in the back. And that all comes together in a way where it's built around geometry of these bars. Kind of staggered with some snots so that we can ultimately get 16 of these facets around the outside. Those facets then are tied in such that we can add some color blocking. These are cheese slopes that cut up and around the outside with the blue and the gray and the yellow. So just spin this around a bit more. Back. Okay. So as I bring this back to the front, let me show you how Heavy Light comes together.
Speed up!
Earlier, I created each of these subcomponents. As you might expect, that took a long time and was super slow. But if you're interested, you can jump to a step-by-step video later using a link in this video's description. For now, I'll head directly to the final assembly. Let's begin the final assembly. And to do that, I will start with the front part of this frame, which I made earlier. Now this is the front, basically the frame for the front half of the ship. So just to spin this around. And to that, we're going to connect the back half of the frame, which is this bit we made earlier. Okay. And underneath this back half of the frame, there's some cutouts here which are going to sit on top of this green 2x2 tile and connect in ultimately on 4 studs. So snap that in place. And then there's some additions here we need to make on top of the frame. We'll add the rear part of the cowl. It comes up over the top, like so. Towards the rear now, we'll do the back of the engines. This is going to add strength to the rear, and so it's, this little piece here. So they'll come in on each the port and the starboard side. Same thing over here. Get that latched in nice and tight. Okay. And then bringing everything upside down. There's a bit here to cover the underneath where all this frame connects and ultimately where the stand will snap in. And so that's this part here, which I made earlier. And some snot work in that to give the connect up into the frame and give a nice look down below. On the back, we'll add the ports for the engine thrusters. And so we have two of these bits. And that's just going to connect it on one stud, which turns out to be fine. It's not going anywhere. And same thing over here. Okay. Then I'm going to add in this main engine or cylindrical unit, which I put together before. And this and that segment's gonna come down through here. There's a hole I've left in the center of the frame. Back. And then back around up underneath, it will connect in. There's 4 studs here that hold this. This is using the jumper plates to put it in exactly the right place. And when that's done, should have a nice edge here sitting on top. Same thing over on this side. Okay. One more bit here before we get to the stand. So down below, I've got this is just a hinge brick with a 2x2 top and a 2x2 plate on top. And I'm going to put the plate in here, leave the hinge brick at an angle. This is just going to be for the reveal to fill a gap. And then this, maybe this little bit here, it's going to come up and around it. Wrap that. Some nice textures, everything tight. Okay. And with that, now I am ready to put this all up onto the frame. So let's back the camera out slightly. Okay. And here's the stand, which I made before. And the connection points up on top of the stand. And so this is going to come up into the bottom of the frame in the slot, the 3 long and 2 long slot in the rear. And then these lift arms in the front are going to connect in on 2 studs here. So once I do that, this is a nice tight and strong connection from the stand. But also one that can be removed. So you can take the ship up off the stand if we need to. Cool. 1 and hopefully 2. just pop that one. All right, and the stand is on. So now just some finishing bits. So this is that fun bit with the twisted hoses that we made before. And this is going to come in, and the back side will come in on these two studs in the yellow around all this tiling. And let me just remember which. And this bit with the gray here at the bottom will be locked in between these two plates with the door rail. So let me get that in. All right, that's great. Okay, like so. Then around this, we'll go this little bit with what is this? 10 facets of these tiles with the bar up on top around a series of 2 deep hinge plates. And we're gonna just bring that around the front. And then that's there are 2 studs here on each side, which are going to connect into the bottom. Yeah, hinge plates on each side. Make sure twist those so that they're flush first. Go around, do the same thing on this side. Okay. And then just even things out up top. The look that I'm looking for. Okay. Now around this bit, I've got these Technic struts here. This is 2 struts. It has a jumper plate into the furthest hole on each of the long side of the strut, and then this comes together 2 friction pins and a Technic brick with 2 holes. And so this whole unit's going to come up underneath here. It's going to sit in between these 2 slopes. It doesn't actually attach to anything in the front. We don't need it structurally, but I want it to be centered, so it locks in there. And then the jumper plates are on the side. Will click in, and we'll do that on each side. Okay. Looks good. Make sure it's centered. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in the side of the engines that wrap around this. So do one side at a time here. And what I need to put on together will be these cool windscreens. Will come in along with this bit that I made before. That's a kind of a cowl around the front of the engine and is holding the greebly parts. And so these 2 will fit inside one another, but I need to connect it all approximately the same time. Oh, and as I do that, the front of this greebly bit is going to lock in around this wedge plate. Okay. And this will connect in on 3 studs. This will connect into 1. The whole thing will be locked together. So let's give it a shot. Okay, and just seize everything up inside. There we go. That sounded good. Okay. All right, and there's a half plate gap here that is intentional. You're not going to see it. It was necessary structurally for another part. Okay. After I do that, then jog around the top of this canopy a bit, we've got this little unit, which I made before, including that fun new curved wedge part. And so this will come in like so. There. And then these tail element that I made before will come up underneath and connect in on 2 studs. Okay. Hit this side now. And same thing. Do over here. Good. Okay. Spin around, jog around the back, and one more tail element. Okay, now one of the most important parts, I'm going to put in the, bring the cockpit in. So here's the cockpit unit that we made before. It's rather complex internally. I removed one side of the cowl so I can see how this is connecting in, and it's going to fit in. It's got a hinge brick down below that will lock, and then it will rest inside of these panel elements. And this is a bit tricky, so let's see if I manage to do it on the first try or not. Oh, good. Good, good, good. Okay, and done properly should be a nice tight fit here into around the front. So. Going to replace these elements, the top half of the bit of the cowl here on the side that I took off. So let's do that. That's good. Okay. And then I left just the top of the engine bit. This little series of wedges and bits will sit up on top, and then into the front here, I'm using these Technic gear racks. So one of these, two for each side. There's one. Oops, last little bit of texture. And 2. All right. So that is completed heavy light. Everything together. One more spin. And then I think coming up off the stand, let's pop this guy out. See the complete ship, and from below,